wise man once said that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. For me, a journey always seems to start with the packing. This is the start of my storytelling journey that will last nearly a month, and that means a month's worth of packing before I've even taken a step. Now, if I had my way, I'd get everybody to come to my house and I'd sit them down and I'd tell them stories in our front room. But that's just not the way that it is. When I first started storytelling and was travelling everywhere and anywhere from one end of the country to the other, I felt like a professional driver who sometimes got to tell stories now and again. I've worked it out that in the last 10 years I've driven to the moon, but not back. Having been a full-time folk singer for 25 years, I have got used to the touring. It's never dull, and in the last few years, as my reputation has grown, I can stay in one place, and I now average about 15,000 miles a year as I go to about 180 schools and colleges. Well, this is the first evening of the video diary. I wasn't 100% sure whether I wanted to do this, mostly because it means I have to carry a camera and a microphone. But as I thought about it, the more I was enamoured with the idea, the more I really liked the idea of keeping a video diary, mostly because I will be going away to Chile, and I thought that that's somewhere where I've never been, and it will have lots of different exciting things happening, and I thought that I would make this a trial run. I do look around the room, and by the way, this is one of my favourite places to stay in Manchester. As I look around the room, every time I turn up, I do have this ability to turn it into some kind of cowboy encampment by dumping all of the stuff that I need to bring with me. One time, I was under the mistaken impression that all I could do was turn up, tell stories and go away. But these days, everybody seems to need evidence. So what I've decided to do is I need to bring with me a computer and a printer and paper and inks and all of those kind of things. I've got kind of used to it. I don't go completely over the top, but it does seem like a lot of things. What I need to do this evening, after the long drive here to Manchester, is I do need to make sure that I've got all of the plans sorted for tomorrow. I'm working in a school that I worked with last year, with some different groups of children to the ones I was working with last year, but one of the teachers is the same, and she's very used to my methods and the kind of methodology that I use. But I've struck up a very strong relationship, a very strong working relationship with one of the teachers, the Year 3-4 teacher, and we're both bouncing ideas off one another. It's very satisfying work, but really now, even though I've just driven, what I need to do is I need to make sure that I've got all the plans in place, so there's a bit of writing to do just right now. Now, one of the hardest things is the fact that I'm working with anywhere up to 5 to 10 schools that all need some kind of evidence and record keeping. So I have learned in the last couple of years how really to make sure that I keep everything in the right place, so I know exactly where it is. So we need to do the planning for tomorrow, which is put in the school's name, followed by the teacher's name, which is followed by the dates that go with that. So I just need to pull up the last one that we worked on and then modify it slightly. I'm not 100% sure who's actually going to be reading these, but that's not that unusual these days. But it's good to have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted and the Q's curled at the bottom. So what I need to do is I need to work on, this is like the pre-session plan. In the class, what we're looking at is instructional language, and with the children and the age that they are, we're looking at something very basic. It's going to be a very physical task. It's going to be how they actually line up. So that's what I'm going to look at now. What we've got here is a list basically of the number of children, the place that they're going to be, how we're going to run the session. The idea being that with these instructional sheets that the children are going to prepare, and the first one that we're going to do just to dip our toe in the water is going to be how they line up. So they've got to go right from the very basics of walking up the stairs, standing in a straight line, making sure it's girl, boy, and we're going to use these because the next topic is going to be adventure stories. So really, it's an assessment of how well the children can actually write instructions for other people to understand, but then use those skills that they're going to develop into making something within a story, like a postcard, or it's going to be a letter that the hero of the next stories is going to receive. So they've got used to instructional language, so they're going to write an instructional letter in the middle of their adventure stories, having already done stories and poetry. So this really is a straight continuation on. What I do like to do is a serial approach to the work, so that each skill builds upon another skill. So the only thing I've got left to do this evening, after having printed out the instructional sheets for the 2 classes, is to print out some CDs, senders. I ran a competition when I was working with the Year 6s to design a DVD cover that would be used on the actual ones that I will sell, of me telling 5 Greek stories, and also to design a CD centre. So I'm going to print those out and I'll give it out to the children who won tomorrow. So quite exciting. Very good. Well, that's everything sorted, all printed. Now all I've got to do is tidy up this mess. So here I am inside of the school. It's been a busy morning. We've been looking at the instructional language, but like many things, things change. Teachers are absent, and sort of planning that I'd chosen to do, I won't be able to do this afternoon, mainly because there's been like a movement within the staff. So all of that planning that I did last night, I'll just have to use another day. But as you can imagine, with problems of disclosure, I can't actually show a film or photographs of me working with the children, but I can show you some of the work that I've done with them. So this is some work on poetry that I did with them last half term.
Choose your words, word them well, to cast a poem spell. Making time for a rhyme isn't such a crime. Like silver bells on a summer's wind, make your words rhyme.
Making time for a rhyme isn't such a crime. Like silver bells on a summer's wind, make your words rhyme.
With the work that we've done today, it's been quite interesting. With the younger children in years 3 and 4, they've probably never come across instructional language before. So I pretended that I was a robot and they had to give me instructions as to how to pick up a pen, and then realised just how precise and ordered their instructions needed to be. I did get to the point where I was doing some unpleasant bending, because they couldn't seem to get me out of being bent double with my head on the ground trying to pick up a pen. So we went back, and I'm very pleased to say that in the end they did get it right. We've used the idea of travelling from outside of the school to the inside of the school and being very precise in lefts and rights and stops and goes. But it's always interesting with younger children that they still always seem to want to try and make a story out of everything that they write. So short of there being a princess who was walking up and down the corridor. But it was interesting and I really enjoyed it. This afternoon I'm going to be working with some Year 6s, and this is a class that I worked with last year, and they did come up with some really good narrative stories, but we're going to be looking at instructional language, and also at the beginning of the year I made them write some notes, and I'm going to let them use those notes to rewrite up what it was that was actually said at that time. They were under the impression that the notes that they made would be sufficient. I think that they'll find that they might need to make more precise notes in the future. But who knows? I'm always willing to be surprised. As I do this, I've become very conscious of the fact that I am supposed to be working, and I'm working and making a diary, and that the diary shouldn't really overtake the work that I'm doing. So I've become very conscious of that. It is still an experiment, still trying to find out what it is, but I think I'd like to finish this day showing you some of the good work that I've done with the children. A white, skinny man, thin legs, crooked walk. I don't want to be like him. Creepy and weird bones missing. Big bones blocking something. A face with no eyes or mouth. Bald, silky skull, not human. I feel scared as I look at him. Long bony fingers, giant bumpy toes. Body falling to pieces, not strong enough. Terrified if he followed me, jumping out at me. I hope he gets you, not me. Almost by accident, I've discovered that most of the things that I've recorded today haven't recorded properly. It seemed like the microphone wasn't working correctly. I don't know if that's a disaster, but it's a bit of a setback, especially this early in a video diary. But a very busy morning, and what a difference a day makes. Yesterday the children were introduced to instructional language, and today it almost seems as if they've been doing it all their lives. We used some paper to make A4 paper cubes, and before they actually constructed the cubes, they wrote the instructions on each of the squares of the net that you use to make a cube. They'd written down the instructions and numbered them 1 to 6, and then we devised a game, a bit like Beetle, where you have to throw the die, and if it lands on a 1, then you could make that part of the cube, which would be the first folds, until you get to number 6, and it's whoever gets from 1 to 6 in sequential order is the winner. Straight after that, we've been planning for the best part of an hour and a half on what's going to happen for the rest of this term, writing adventure stories and mystery stories, how we're going to plot and plan these, and make sure that the teachers are involved in the delivery of the process. And then after that, I'm going to be delivering again to another class, a Year 4-5 class, and then I'm going to be planning again, and after that there's going to be a discussion at the end of school, and that's going to be followed by a drive to Bristol. Now I'm feeling pretty good at the moment, but maybe if you ask me at 9 o'clock tonight, when I've driven the 3.5 hours to Bristol, it might be slightly different, but who knows.
Hotel room overlooking a runway. The family's
once our fear was
After 300 yards, turn left, then sharp right.
morning. That was a long drive. I think mostly it was the M6 was like such a stop still, stand go kind of journey, but I was only delayed by an hour, so it's just after 9, so the end of a 14-hour day. Very interesting this afternoon, especially after we'd done the planning, and then we had like a review of how we think that the whole project's going. I've got to say I've been very lucky. The people that I've been working with have been very cooperative. They've allowed me to sort of show them different creative ideas, and also they've taken on board a lot of the things that I've asked them to do and run with them. Some excellent work. And then at the end of the day we had a discussion which was all about the way that the school does assessment of the children, and I've got to say it's very detailed, and you can tell how, say, perhaps a child on free milk with English as a second language who's only been in the school 6 months can tell you exactly what level they are at and how much progress they've made in a short space of time. I've got to say, and this sounds awful, but if I was subjected to having to fill in all of these forms now, I think I might reconsider what it is that I do. I'm much happier just turning up, telling stories, and then turning around and going home. I do try and improve the children's lives, but I don't think that I can be forever filling in forms. Anyway, very good, nice place, very amenable. I was a bit worried because I thought I was going to have to park the car on the street with everything in it, or the alternative would be to take everything out and fill the room up with a guitar, a banjo, 3 lots of clothing, camera, lights and action, but thankfully there's a car park associated with the hotel, and that really is me for the night. Had enough, so night night. So I've learned how to use another shower that seems to go from polar ice cap to the middle of Jamaica. The laundry bag monster's eaten a few more of my clothes, and it's a new day, and I'm off to a Muslim school to tell some stories. The only thing that's different is I won't be allowed to use my guitar or my banjo to sing, but then again I've been so busy that I haven't had a chance to play them anyway. As ever, I wonder what the day will bring.
Check. It's Friday, go for the evening breakfast.
Yes, that's
yeah,
right. Yeah, lovely, thank you.
Turn left, then turn right.
You might not be able to see it, but there's not much graffiti around. But what people have done, bill posters have stuck them on the sides of the wheelie bins. So some of the wheelie bins are absolutely plastered with posters for student events and things like that. Never seen that. Interesting. Different. Well, what an absolutely fantastic day it's been. Unusual in that I didn't get to play the guitar or the banjo, but we still did some singing. The children were lovely. And it just comes down to the fact that children are children no matter where you are. I did do the whole history of 4,500 years worth of storytelling in 15 minutes for some year 7 children who had attitude just as any other child has attitude at year 7. But it was great, really enjoyed it. I sort of smiled to myself as I was walking through Bristol, because there was a man just outside of Wesley's new house preaching at the top of his lungs for the best part of 20 minutes, and then later I went back into a Muslim school and was drinking out of a Happy Christmas mug, and that's what I like. I just love the fact that this is such a diverse country, and we had such a good time today. Lots of storytelling, still no music, but tomorrow I will be singing and playing. I've finally been able to find out exactly what it is that I'm doing. But what I would like to do is I'd like to tell the story that I've told today of Mullah Nasrudin.
Nasrudin was as good a man as any man, tall, strong, clever, witty and funny. But it was getting close to the end of harvest time, and the greatest farmer in all of that land had decided that he would hold a great feast. And all of the men who were cutting at the corn were very excited. It was going to be their turn to go inside of his great house and eat chicken and chickpeas, fine flat breads. They would have honey and breads and all kinds of sweetmeats. And as they worked, they were starting to get worried, because as the sun was going down, the moon was rising. And they were worried in case they couldn't wear their finest clothes and they wouldn't be there in time for the great feast. Mullah Nasrudin decided that he would speak out. I, for all of you, shall do the work so that you can go home and you can get dressed and you shall go to the feast, and I will join you all later. The men couldn't believe it. Mullah Nasrudin was going to work for them so that they could go and they could have the feast. And so it was. One by one the men went, and soon there was only Mullah Nasrudin cutting at the corn. But he made sure that he cut the corn, laid the hay in bundles, put the corn to one side, and it was still warm work. For as he sweated, the dust would rise and stick to his face. As he walked in amongst all of the sheaves of corn, the mud would splash onto his clothes. And he wondered himself whether he would have a chance to go home and get washed. But he did like to eat chicken and chickpeas and flatbreads and bread, potatoes, spinach, honey, all of those things. He did want to eat them. But if he was to go home, then maybe there wouldn't be anything left for him. And he decided that what he would do is he would go dressed in his work clothes. No one would mind. He'd done all of the work for them. But when he got to the farmer's house and he knocked once and twice and 3 times upon the door creaked open, and all of the assembled company inside looked and saw nothing more and nothing less than a tramp, dressed from head to foot in dust and mud. "What do you want?" they all screeched at him. Mullah Nasrudin said, "I would like to have something to eat." "Yeah!" But he pushed his way through, and I must tell you that as he pushed through and the mud would go on their clothes, they were not pleased. And when he tried to reach to get some of the chicken and the chickpeas and the flatbreads, people would push him to one side, and he found it very difficult to reach for the food, and no one would give him a plate. And when he did grab a handful of food and he held it in his dusty hands, he saw that there was a seat that he could sit on, and he went to try and sit on it, and another man jumped into his place. And when he moved to where there was a place, someone else would jump into his place, and he decided that he had had enough. And he would not stay in this place where he was not welcome, even though he had done all of the work for all of the men. When he went home, he brushed some of the gravy from off his hands, and he could see his own clean skin underneath, and he decided that he would wash, and he would go back, and he would say just what he was thinking of all of those people. He put on his finest coat. It had red and orange and yellow and green and blue and indigo and violet. It was trimmed with silver at the sleeves and gold at the neck. And Mullah Nasrudin strode his way back, all the way back, into the farmer's feast. He knocked on the door once and twice and 3 times, and this time when the door creaked open, before he had a chance to tell them just what he thought of them, they all went, "Oh, Mullah Nasrudin, you're so welcome inside of the house. Come here, take some of the chicken from my plate. Here, have one of my potatoes. Eat some of my spinach. The flatbread is yours." And before he had a chance to tell them just what he thought of them, they all shuffled to one side and made a space for him there by the side of the tables. And when he had this chance to speak, a smile crept across his lips. He took a succulent piece of chicken. He raised it up towards his nose, and he could smell how sweet and salty it was, and before he laid it upon his tongue, he placed it inside of his coat. The assembled company gasped. "Nasrudin, what are you doing?" But none of them spoke the words, they only thought it. And here he reached for some chickpeas, and he placed them up towards his lips, and he sniffed at them and placed them in another pocket. And he took another piece of bread, and everyone watched him as he placed bread and gravy, chickpeas and honey inside of his coat, and
Finally, they could not hold their tongues anymore. One turned and said, "Mullah Nasrudin, what are you doing?" He looked at them and said, "When I stood at the door and was covered with dust and mud, you looked at what I looked like, and you did not make me welcome. And now that I have come here, dressed in my beautiful coat, covered with all of the colours of the rainbow, you fall over each other to fawn and say to me that you can have my food, you can eat at my table, you can sit beside me. So I decided that it was only the coat that you were interested in, and so I fed my coat." All of the assembled company felt shamed, their cheeks blushed, to realise that Mullah Nasrudin was correct, for he had said to them that all they had wished to look at was not him, not the man, not who he could have been, but what he looked like. And now Mullah Nasrudin sat down, and he did eat. And I hope that you have learned a lesson. I hope that you realise that you looked at what I looked like and not who I was or who I could have been. And from this time, still he could smile. And from this time, you must make sure that you think about the man inside of the clothes and not the clothes themselves. Mullah Nasrudin would sit and eat and dine out on the story of when he fed his coat. And here I am in the middle of a rural idyll, absolutely gorgeous place, and this is very unusual for me. Usually I wind up staying in hotels, and this is the exception to the rule. Some friends that I stay with were well fed and well watered, and everything's just lovely. It's a great place. So tomorrow, really looking forward to playing the guitar with some very little children and telling stories to very little children. And then the next day I'll be working in an open prison, which will be completely different. And then over to work with some parents and children over in Milton Keynes. So everything seems to be falling into place. And I'm kind of getting the idea and the rhythm of this making a video diary. It all seems to be going swimmingly well, apart from the fact that the microphone doesn't work. But apart from that, it's marvellous. Now this is much more like it. I don't have to sort of get up early. There's been no alarm clock, and just like a bit of a lie in bed. When I say lie in, it's about 8:30. But at least I've got up and woken up when I've chosen to. I'm not actually starting until 10:30, and I'm working in a library with the little ones, so I'm really looking forward to that. So just a little bit more on this. There's nothing wrong with playing games on computers. It helps you to clear your mind. So my mind should be very clear.
Make a U-turn. Turn left. Turn right. Go left on the roundabout, first exit. You have reached your destination.
Here I am in the great metropolis that is Bradley Stoke. You can't say that this work isn't varied. Yesterday working in a Muslim academy, today working with very little children in libraries, and tomorrow in an open prison. And then the day after that working with parents. So I do love the variety of this work, and I'm quite looking forward to the fact that I'm going to be singing. And when people ask me and say, do you not mind working with the very little ones, I love it. They're hilarious, the things that they come out with, and just the way that they react. For some of them, I'm going to be the first introduction to storytelling, and I need to make sure that the job that I do is a good one. So there's the good news and the not so very good news. The good news is I've now got a microphone that I can work and use from a distance. The bad news means that the very expensive microphone that I had, which was Radio 1, isn't seeming to work. So to a certain extent I was partially hoping that it was the camera that was broken, but no, it's the microphone. But all things aside, yeah, what happened at the library was absolutely fantastic. There were 70 to 80 children there with all the parents, all in a very small confined space, but it was absolutely fantastic. I wound up singing and playing for 30 minutes with all of these children. Again, because of disclosure, I can't take any photographs of them, but I did record it, so you'll hear a bit of it now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once I caught a fish alive. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then I let it go. Give yourselves a big round of applause. This is a story which is called The King of the Fish. There was a house. Can you all draw the house with me? And in the house there was a man, and every day he lived in his house. I said angry. Ready? Here we go. And he ran this way, and he went, Flatfish, flounder, king of the sea, grant a wish for Isabel, but not for me. And the king of the fish said, does she want a new house? It was made out of gold, and he gasped. So much louder than that. And it was just enough to make a great house, and they both lived happily ever after. Give yourselves a round of applause. Well done. What does a dog say? Woof, woof, woof. And what does a cat say? Meow, meow, meow. And what does a mouse say? Squeak, squeak, squeak. But what does a lion say? Are you trying to frighten me? What does a cow say? Clap your hands. Turns for a wriggle.
Turn right, then you have reached your destination.
My finger can dance, my finger can dance, my finger can dance all day. My finger can dance if you give it half a chance, then it dances away. My fingers go, oh, the grand old York. He had 10,000 men, he marched them up to the top of the hill, and he marched them down again. And when they were up, they were up, and when they were down, they were down, and when they were only halfway up, they were neither up nor down. The wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round. The wheels on the bus go round and round, all day long. And the wipers on the bus go swish, 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 swish. The wipers, old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. And on that farm he had a pig, E-I-E-I-O. With an oink, oink here and an oink, oink there. Here an oink, there an oink, everywhere an oink, oink. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. What's next on the farm? That's lovely.
As you can probably hear, a fine time was had by one and all. 3 very different sessions, all very enjoyable. Large group for the first session, not so many for the middle session, and the last group are mixed ages. So it gave me an opportunity to sing a whole range of different songs and tell a whole range of different stories, which I suppose is what keeps it alive and interesting for me. So now I'm just bracing myself for the rest of the next 2 or 3 weeks to go. So 5 down and 150,000 left to go. So how lucky am I that I've got friends who are hospitable, kind, and bring you cups of tea in the morning to wake you up. Absolutely wonderful. What a great stay I've had. And I know this part of Britain really quite well. When I used to be a folk singer, I'd travel around here a lot. I've done lots of school in Gloucestershire and Bristol and in Milton Keynes. And the journey's good. Unfortunately, because of the confidential nature of working within a prison, I can't really tell you that much, other than I'll be working with two groups today. One will be a group of drop-in writers, and the second group will be a group of dedicated writers who have shown an interest in writing, and I'm there to give them quite an intense course on how to improve their own writing and understanding of what a story needs to have in it. Much as it would be great just to stand around and enjoy Albion's Everglade at its best, as ever, I really need to get a move on and get myself off to the next place of work.
Turn around when possible.
I've decided that rather than talk about the prison today, I'd rather have some time to think about what I'm going to say. One of the best things about driving is the fact that it gives you a chance to clear your mind, have a little look around, enjoy the countryside. And I do love the countryside of the whole of Britain, right from the northernmost parts of the Highlands right down to Cornwall and Kent, Exeter, Essex, all of those places. I did, on my 18th birthday and my 40th birthday and my 50th birthday, cycle down from Newcastle to London, and I really got a good feel for the whole of Britain. Not quite as fast as the roads are now, especially not when I was 18, and I remember when I was 40 it was a bit like kind of dodging the traffic, but when I went on my 50th birthday I was much more careful about the route that I planned, and I also had the wherewithal to stay in places that weren't just youth hostels, so that sometimes some of the journeys were quite long. And I do love the countryside.
A simple story is better, but I don't care. I want to give for people as much as possible, things for the money.
When you came. This is BBC Radio 4. It's 5 o'clock. Time for PM with Carolyn Quinn. As a key paragraph.
Another reason why I know this area, apart from just having sung around here and travelled around here and worked in schools, is that our daughter went to work in Bolton-on-the-Water. So we travelled around, and she actually ran away to the circus with our encouragement. She ran away to the circus, and we used to go and visit her and go and see them. Absolutely wonderful. She had a great life, living in a trailer, in a horse box, looking after animals, performing every night. She loved it, and we loved to see her just blossom. Here I am in Milton Keynes, a very interesting day, and some of the work that I did with the clients at the open prison, very interesting, very lively. So this is a poem that we wrote, an autobiographical poem, which is all about going to the swimming baths. Black cotton pump bag, churning stomach, nerves pulling at me, hoping these butterflies would skim me over the water. Proud badge clenched in tightly closed fist, chips and crunchy canteen corn. A swimmer, that's me. It's Saturday the 27th of February and I'm just off to go and do a session for the National Childminders Association. What I'm doing is I'm waiting while the sat-nav warms up. Couldn't be any closer to where I'm supposed to be. The accommodation is about 6 or 7 minutes away, which is really good. and this being a weekend, I didn't have anything on the Sunday morning, and I couldn't get into the place that I usually stay in Manchester. So what I did was I booked this place for an extra day. So it's almost like I've got a bit of a holiday waiting for, you know, so that I can leave tomorrow morning at a reasonable time and get to the hotel in Manchester just as it opens, which means I'll have even more free time. I do like this travelling, and this is something really good accommodation. There was once a time when I was staying in all of the cheapest of hotels, which didn't mean that they were the worst, and I could certainly tell you a few tales about them. Things like they all seem to sort of like fry up quail's eggs and find the smallest tomatoes you possibly could, but this is really good. And luckily these days I have the wherewithal, if needs be, just to sort of say, well, how much is the hotel, and not worry too much about the price. I mean, I don't wind up staying in 5-star accommodation, but it's all very good. So I do like the idea that I said that I'm waiting for the sat-nav to warm up, as if this is a world that's filled with valves still. Oh, and there you go, it's ready.
Last chance for Wriggles. Well, I'll see how quick
This isn't the first time that I've actually been to work in a prison, but I've got to tell you, the first time I went, I felt very unnerved, even though it was an open prison. I think it was the thing of having to hand in your keys and your wallet and your mobile phone. You had to sign for every door that you went through, even if you went through for just a minute. And I found it very difficult to sleep that night after I'd been in the prison during the day. But this time, this is the second time, and it's about 8 months later, I've got to say I was much more used to it and knew what to expect. I think the first time it was the fear of the unknown. While I was there, I had a very interesting talk with a man who was older than me, who basically gave me his life story, and I was more than willing to hear, and how he's done all of his education since he's been in prison. It almost turned out that he had more degrees than a thermometer, which he thought was quite funny. But it was interesting looking at him, how he was talking about how when he was a young man he was boisterous, and how he was always seen as a troublemaker. There must be a certain element of that, since that was where I met him, but it was very interesting talking to him. The idea when I was doing this video diary was to make sure that I shot in locations that were different each time, just to make it more visually interesting. But English weather being English weather, the instant I got the camera out, switched it on, the heavens started to open, a bit like this. It's unfortunate that I can't take photographs or videos of when I'm actually working. I understand exactly why I can't, but it's been very interesting today because I've given several lectures to this group of childminders, and I've been talking about the theory, and today, after about a year and a half, they actually got to see me working with children. I know it's a very un-British thing to do, but the reviews that I got, they were excellent, and I know that I do a good job, and I felt very happy. No, I felt extremely happy to see that they could see that all of the things I talked about do have a basis in reason and in practicality. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of singing, a lot of playing. Now here's the thing, I've just been looking at the news and there's been a huge earthquake in Chile, which is a bit worrying, especially since I'm due to go there in 6 weeks' time. It's not that I'm worried about the fact that the tour might not come off, but the fact that people that I've spoken to on emails and on the phone may well be in danger. I mean, my attitude is it's about 250 miles away from Santiago and Valparaiso, which is where I'm actually going to be working. But still a terrible thing, and if there's a choice to be made, I will certainly choose to go. I remember the last time that there was a tsunami and earthquake like that, the people who lived there said, please, you know, come to the places where there's no problem. It only seems to make matters worse if everybody has a knee-jerk reaction and doesn't turn up. But definitely something to phone home about. I've spoken to Anne, and it's happened, or the news broke when I was actually working in the nursery, and she told me that there was an earthquake in a place called Concepcion, and that's about 250 miles south of Santiago, and she's like me. It's a case of would rather go than not go. I'm not due to go for another 6 weeks, and she won't be going for nearly 2 months. So a lot of things can change in that time, so hopefully everybody will be all right. You know, a teacher said to me recently, what you do is like a proper job. It's like a business, isn't it? It's a good job I've got a sense of humour. He turned around and said, yeah, nearly. Now that's got to be a world land speed record for packing a car. And I've gained an extra bag somewhere along the line, so here we go with the rest of my nearly a proper job.
BBC News at midday. The Chilean government says it's doing all it can to help people affected by one of the worst earthquakes ever recorded. Thousands of people spent the night camped in the streets, fearing more.
The world this weekend, this is Sean Lay. Hello. Chile has been experiencing more aftershocks as the search continues for survivors of yesterday's earthquake. 100 people are reported to be trapped in a collapsed building.
We're still getting aftershocks. We've had about 30 so far, about 5 of them big ones. Here in Santiago, the situation is slowly returning to normal. Parts of the city were badly affected where there are kind of older buildings, but the building codes here are very strict, and the city superficially has survived quite well. We've got electricity cuts at times, the communications are intermittent, but things are slowly returning to normal. The bigger problem is around the city of Concepcion, which is about 385
Take the exit, then you have reached your destination.
And if it's Sunday, then it must be Manchester. So here I am again, back to work in the same school for the first 2 days, Monday, Tuesday. And then after that I'm in a different school that's booked me outside of Creative Partnerships. Then I am off to Peterborough, and then I'm going to get to see my wife Anne. Hurrah! So it's been busy and a good drive, and I'm going to do what I don't usually get a chance to do since I'm staying here for 4 days. I'm going to actually put some stuff away and hang some stuff up, so it doesn't look as if I'm a cowboy and this is a campsite. And that, as they say, is all there is to it. And that was a day off. A really busy day today. 2 energetic classes, and looking again at instructional language. I must admit that this morning with the Year 3-4s, they were absolutely fantastic. What they were doing was they were recalling a time when Adopt a Chef, they had a chef who came in who worked in the school, and it was all part of a scheme called Adopt a Chef. He came in and he made potage. He made potage with them for them to taste, and it was all about Tudors, and that was in late October, and now here on the first day of March the children had to recall what happened and how it tasted and how they made it, and they were really very good. And I'm quite proud that the teacher that I've been working with, they've taken the ideas that I've used, because I think that if you're going to write instructional language you should be able to get most things over and explained in 8 stages. She's taken that on board, and they've been making recipes for milkshakes and jelly, and they also did that for the potage, and it was absolutely fantastic. And we also, because it was potage and parsnips and place and put and pour, we made up a poem which is, well, not exactly a poem, more of a tongue twister, all about potage, and it sounds like this. Push, place and put parsnip, pepper and parsley in the pot. Pour water to make St. Patrick's pottage for the present pleasant pupils' party in the pantry. In the afternoon, because the teacher is going to be on long-term leave, the new teacher and I, who have worked together in the past, tried an activity which is all about sort of finding your way from one part of the school to the other. But with the children being Year 4-5, the level of instructional language and descriptional language was much better. It was absolutely fantastic again. Really enjoyed it. Very good fun. the kind of like dry sense of humour really appeals to me. And then we looked at maps, and what I did then was to make sure that there's a differentiation between what I'm doing with the Year 3-4s and the Year 4-5s. We looked at two journeys that they make on a regular basis. One is to the local swimming baths and the other one is to the Arndale Centre. So I strapped the camera in on the front seat and drove to both of them. And tomorrow we're going to be using those to try and look at how many ways you can give people directions and description of the way that they actually have to go. We also looked at local maps and got them to make a list of directions to get to various places. As well as all of this, the people from Creative Partnerships have been in and they've been filming me. So strangely, after all of this filming, I felt a little bit self-conscious, but that soon went. And also I spoke to the boss of my Creative Partners agents. So all in all, a lot of scrutiny, a lot of filming, but enjoyable nevertheless. There are lots of advantages of living and working on the road. One, it makes for an interesting and varied life, and no 2 days are the same. But it also makes for difficulties, like if you don't know where the post office is, then you need to go and look on the internet, and that can be at any old time of day or night. And you also have to do everything almost as if you're on the run. So when you're coming to addressing a set of labels, you have to do it where and when you can, and then you have to try and find a post office or a post box that works. One of the things that the internet can't do is it can't tell you that the nearest post office to where you might be working could well turn out to be a boarded up, burnt out shell in the middle of a boarded up and burnt out estate. So it does make for even posting a letter being quite interesting. These are a couple of letters that I'm sending copies of the video diary to some friends of mine. One is in New Zealand and the other one is in New York, who runs a school about singing and speaking in New York City. And it's very interesting because we exchange emails. Oh, how the internet has changed our lives. We've been looking at instructional language for quite some time now, and we used it to try and get some directions from one part of town to another part of town, and the children worked really well. It was an activity that worked well, and it almost, and any teachers are watching this, it almost fitted in with the plan that we had made. It also gave us a chance at the end of the session to play a game with the children, a going home to school game, where the children had to go from one place, which was their home, and travel along a board game, a bit like Snakes and Ladders, until they actually came to school. There were hazards, there were things that they had to do. And knowing that these children don't always have a die inside of the house, I geared the game towards using a 2-pence piece, which they had to flip, and that would help them to move. But anyway, the game itself looks a bit like this. Now, a king is no different to anyone else. He has instructions that he needs to follow, things that he is told that he must do. But a king, being a king, sometimes he can choose. And he would read the list of instructions. I'm not doing that. The things that told him what he must do. I will not do that. I cannot, will not, shall not, and never could, would, or should have to do that. But in the country that he lived, everyone looked at the king with envy. The eyes would be green with envy because they wished that they could be just like that king. They wished that they could have the choice to only do the things that they wanted to do. But sometimes people would look at the king with anger. Not just envy, but anger. Anger that he did nothing for them. And the people were empty in their bellies. The people were hungry. The people were cold, were wet. They had no gold to buy more food. They had no money with which to maintain their farms. And the king would look and read the list. I cannot do that. I will not do that. I never could, would, should, or ever will in 100,000 lifetimes do that. And he would ignore the instructions that he was given. But one day, some people came into the castle. There was one, a man, taller than all of the rest, and he would say, Your Majesty, Your Majesty, we are hungry, we are cold, we need food in our bellies, we need you to help. And it was one of the instructions that the king had, to look after the people. But he took a coin and he flipped it, and for a change he looked and he said, Perhaps I shall feed you. And everyone was grateful. Food was placed upon their tables, food was inside of their bellies, and for a moment the king was looked upon as someone who was kind and gracious and not looked at with anger. But people would come again. The rains had fallen, the floods had grown, and the king would look at his list, and it was one of the things to make sure that he would do to look after the people of that country. And he had looked at it that day, but perhaps it was the fact that people were starting to look at him with kindness that again he took a coin and he flipped it. But this time he didn't see his own head. He looked and he said, No, I cannot do that. I will not do that. I shall not now, never, or ever do that. And the people were cold. And again, there was anger in the country as they saw the king as he would refuse to do the instructions that he was given. But again, the tallest of all of the men came in and said, Your Majesty, we are hungry, we are cold, the crops have not grown and we need your help. And this time the king took the coin and he flipped it high in the air and it didn't seem to land. And for once in his life, he made a decision that wasn't upon the spin of a coin, that wasn't upon a whim or a fancy. He did what he felt inside of his heart, and he thought that it would be a good thing to feed the people, to help them inside of their houses. And without the coin to flip, he wondered what it was he could do to make these people more gracious and kinder and more grateful to him. And he realised that if he gave each and every one of them enough gold as they could hold inside of their fists, then they could buy crops to grow more. They could buy grain so that they could feed and grow, so that they could cultivate the land, so that they could not spend all of their time warding the cold from their skin and worrying about where they would eat. And the land prospered. Now it so happened that that tall man who'd gone in to see the king, he'd been so busy trying to flip the coin that he hadn't seen him go behind him. And when the king had flipped the coin, he'd reached above him and taken the king and put it behind his back, so that the king had to make decisions that were based upon the things that he thought and he felt. And from that time people did live well inside of that place. But that tall man would keep that coin close to him and make sure that people would look at the king for the kindness that he did and not just for the flip of a coin. being away, I must make sure that I get enough exercise. I try and walk as much as I possibly can, but also take exercise by having tape recorded a programme from the Wii Fit, and nobody needs to see me doing that.
Stretch your arm and leg using large dynamic movements. Now raise your right leg so you're standing on one leg. Try counting out loud. 1, 2, 1.
This is a bit of a different journey for me, going right across the centre of town to the far side, over towards Walkden, through Salford. What I'd done was I'd put into the TomTom that I wanted to go across town, and it sent us onto the Mancunian Way. Now the thing is, I've been stuck on there before, and the way that it actually took me was along dead ends and onto the wrong direction on one-way streets. So in the end I did find myself on the Mancunian Way, and once I'd got through the middle of town it seemed to be much better. You might notice that there's a lot of 4x4s with buffalo bars on the front in this part of town. That's because there's an awful lot of buffaloes in Manchester. It's also quite refreshing that the parents who are driving are looking quite frantic to make sure that they get the children to school on time. A lovely school, I've been there before, and for me it'll seem quite strange that all I'll really be doing will be telling stories, singing songs, instead of doing writing workshops.
Then you have reached your destination.
Oh, one slice of bread, another slice of bread. Oh, what shall we put in between? A little bit of butter and some soft chocolate. That's a sandwich fit for a queen. Point! With some for you and some for me. A soft chocolate sandwich for my tea. Get all of it. What does it taste like? Let's just say, take a big bite. Show me a song. Thank you.
She was a good girl, but she never had any money in all of this world, and now as she stood by the side of the fast river, she could see that the roof that was made out of straw was starting to get old. But she didn't have any time to think about that, for she was hungry, starving, hungry, by the side of the river, and this girl had a blue rod in her hands that had been given to her by her father, and she was catching the fish that lived in the river. The fish were as golden as the sun at a sunset, and somehow, on this day it seemed so strange that as the sun was setting, there was a rainbow in the air. She looked, and she didn't know whether it was a trick of the light or the way that the water was going, but she could see that there was something at the side of the river that she'd never seen before. It looked like 2 tall towers that were made out of sand, strong kind of sand that you would find down by the side of the beach. And as she looked, she could see that there was a man inside, a man who had in his hands a ball. It wasn't a bouncing ball. It wasn't a ball that was made out of gold. It was a ball that was made out of glass. He said to the girl, "I know that you are poor. I know that you have nothing to eat, but I shall throw this ball to you and skim it across the water." And as it went, it moved. It skimmed. It came to the other side. And before it had a chance to crash and break on the rocks, she scooped it up and looked, and she was about to say thank you, when she looked and she saw that the towers and the man had gone. And now there was a glass ball in her hand. But as soon as she held it, it seemed to roll onwards, and it started to move. She could hear the old man's voice above the racing waters of the fast-flowing river. It said, "Follow the ball, and you shall have a good life." She wondered how the ball wouldn't crash and break as it went upon one road, as it went over rivers, down by the sides of streams, and everywhere that it stopped, she would help each person who needed help at that place. And she would learn how to do things, how to cook, how to sew, how to knit, how to mend, how to make things out of wood, and how to use a saw, a hammer, and make things. And still she travelled. And it wasn't until she came down to the side of the sea when she saw that she had riches inside of her heart, skills and things that she could do to make and mend, cut and sew, to saw and hammer, and she could do all things for all men and all women. And she was a good woman, because now she changed from a girl to a woman. And down by the side of the sea, she put in her pocket another piece of gold that she'd been given for helping someone. She sat with a cake. She sat with a cake for her birthday, down by the side of the sea, with a hat upon her head and a smile upon her lips, as she watched her own children playing by the side of the sea, playing with frisbees as the sun set and a rainbow was in the sky. Back straight, big deep breath, here we go. And nobody went out and looked after the sheep. And then the old man, well, he woke up the next day, stretch with me. And he looked at the old woman and he said, it's your turn to go and look after the cow. And the old woman said, no, I do everything. And he had mud on his nose. He had mud on his ears. He had mud in between his toes. Oh, silly man! You've knocked the sausage onto the fire. Oh! Do that with me. Oh! I wish. Do it. Wish. I wish. I wish that the sausage was on the end of your nose. And the two of them lived happily ever after. Give yourselves a round of applause. Well done. Well, I've got to say that we've done very well with our story. Straight big there, right? Here we go. So today was in a school that I've been to before. I had a really good time last time. Last time it was more about doing writing workshops, and this time, with it being so close to World Book Day, it was all about just enjoying stories. A great time, as I've said already, about the fact that all of the children were being sort of taken to school in 4x4s, and everybody was racing there to be on time. There's such a contrast to some of the other schools that I work in, where perhaps school is sometimes seen almost as a babysitting service, and not a well-respected one at that. But a great day, and I think it's a testament to the teachers that the children were witty and funny, and they got all of the jokes, and it wasn't all about the academia. It was about like interaction, and I love children who are really sparky, who are ready to sort of take a joke and give as good as they get. Very interesting that this is the second time I've been there, and also the fact that the teachers picked up so much on the songs that I'd sung with the children before, that the children almost felt as if, well, a bit like a superstar really, because the children knew all of the songs because they'd actually played the CDs that I'd sent to the school. Very good. Loved it. Thankfully, we've received some news from our friends in Chile and Argentina. Quite an emotional email, to say the least, but everything seems to be going ahead despite everything that's going on over there, and still looking forward to the trip. I've just got into the hotel here in Peterborough, which is absolutely fantastic, a great place, only to find that the camera's not working. The video is recorded but I can't play back, and I can't show you all of the shots of coming over the Pennines, but what I can do is I can use the camera that's involved inside of the laptop and do this, and through the magic of editing and the fact that I'll be able to do this once I get home in a fortnight's time, what I'll be able to do is I'll be able to put the shots in at the right place, and hopefully I'll have fixed the camera by then. But it's interesting. Through my life, people have wound up saying, you look like, and when I was younger and I had long curly hair, people said that I used to look like Roger Daltrey, which I thought was quite flattering. And then later, they would say, you look like a young David Hemmings. But today, I've been likened to Laurie McNenemy. Now, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, since I don't follow football, but at least it's better than the last one, which is where somebody said that I look like David Dickinson. Cheap as chips! One of the things that I didn't say was that when I was taking the video of the park yesterday, I'd been in the park when the project in Manchester first started, and the weather was quite considerably different to the way that it looked yesterday. So what I'll do is I'll just show you some of the shots from yesterday on the 3rd, and some of the shots that I took when I was snowed in Manchester. Well, it looks as if I've got the camera fixed and I've got it working again. Here in Peterborough, it's not that far away from Cambridge, probably about like 30 miles or so, but that's 30 miles closer than I am when I'm in Newcastle. So I'm very excited. I'm going to go over and see Sam and take him out for a meal. So I don't mind that it's like a little bit of extra driving, just the fact that I'll get to see him. I feel very fortunate, extremely fortunate, that I do get the chance to travel around the country. And when our daughter was living in Swindon, I could often pick some of the schools to work in and go and visit her. If I was in Reading, well, it's only a hop, skip and a jump down the M4. And also, when I've been working in Wales, I've also had the chance to go and see our oldest son. So I do feel very fortunate. It's a beautiful spring day. It's the 4th of March. It's 10:15 and it's World Book Day. Oh my God! It's World Book Day, the day that every storyteller should be booked. Except I've been cancelled. So here we go, World Book Day, and I haven't got a booking. They phoned me up a couple of days ago just to say we've got an appearance evening that's stretched into the day, so we won't need your services. I was supposed to be in Warrington, so goodness only knows what they thought I was going to do. They said, can you do the next day? It always makes me laugh when I think that people are sitting there thinking that all I'm doing is waiting for them to phone me. I am quite busy, you might have noticed. So it gives me a chance to get to the next booking, which is in Peterborough on Friday, and it also gives me a kind of leisurely drive to get across the Pennines. It winds up saying that'll be like a 2.5 hour drive, but that would be if there were no cars, no traffic lights, no roadworks, and the wind was behind me. So I'm going to take it quite leisurely. Also, it gives me an opportunity to pop in and see my middle son and take him out for a meal. Hopefully, you won't want to go for a curry. Living this close to the Curry Mile in Manchester means that I've had 4 curries in 5 days, and I might be suffering the effects of that. But anyway, I'll take the chance to do some sightseeing, maybe even go across the Pennines. Well, there's every chance of that. And let's just see what the day brings.
Neil Candler of Colchester is through to 3 and 10. Well done, Neil.
Thank you.
There you are. You've clearly won with 27 points. It's well done on that. And now do even better with 3 in 10. If you can. 10 seconds. Of course you can. 10 seconds, 3 answers. What can you do with this, please?
All the luck went to the next valley and its resort, Budari. It's just an hour away, but it's where the elite of Georgia's capital, Tbilisi, goes skiing. At weekends, the resort is so packed that scrums form at the bottom of the ski lifts.
If there are teenagers in your family, have they downloaded things onto mobile phones without realising how much they're going to cost? Well, 14,000 people complained to the regulator last year. Those figures are...
Farther than across the supper table or across the room. Somewhere in the middle distance. He is dwarfed by trees or the sweep of a hill, but his features are still visible. His body language is still distinct. Well, that is a distance I never found. He was never dwarfed by the landscape. The fields, the buildings, the white pine windbreak.
Great generosity, great magnanimity, and that the way in which traditional values are being represented now, frankly, aren't characterized by either one of those things. I mean, to a degree that really disturbs me.
The opposition to those 18th and 19th century values is a key theme of one of the...
Day night at 9, repeated Wednesday afternoon at 4:30.
Indications are that today the Electoral Commission has decided there is no proof that the millions of pounds he gave to the Conservative Party were illegal. It is, though, expected to be a highly detailed report which will examine the role of his company, Bearwood Corporate Services, through which most of the donations were channeled. And while the Electoral Commission is thought to have cleared Lord Ashcroft, much will depend on the language in the report and whether there are any concerns or criticisms. At the same time, the public...
Unity government. Some ministers are able to travel all over the world. Others are not, are restricted. So there is no equality in that kind of situation.
Gordon Brown has said he understands public outrage about the James Bulger case, but he's insisted that the justice system has to be allowed to deal with it. John Venables, one of the boy's killers, has been returned to jail after breaching the terms of his licence. There have been calls for the government to say exactly why Venables was recalled to prison. As Mr. Brown says, the judge said the planned attack could have been as big as the London bombings or the explosions on trains in Madrid. 2 German converts to Islam and 2 Turkish men were found guilty of preparing explosive devices after investigators found a large stockpile of hydrogen peroxide. Police on today's programme. Are your teenagers being misled into spending lots of money on mobile phone downloads?
On the back of magazines, there's images. I wanted one for a wallpaper, and then I picked it, and then I didn't end up getting the image, but they kept charging me a £5 or 3 weeks in a row. Every time I topped up each week, so it ended up being £15 for an image I never got.
We'd like your views. The World at 1, this is Martha Carney with 30 minutes of news and comment. And in the programme today, the Electoral Commission has ruled that donations made to the Conservative Party through a...
Said, oh, you are the oldest boy and you are the best boy. I love you. I'm going to give you an axe that is made out of gold. Can you make that gold with me? An axe that is made out of gold. I'm going to give you a... Give me some. And the oldest boy said, no, what's the matter with this old man? Ready? This time you've got to clap your hands when you bring it down. And he raised the axe high in the air and he shot. But the axe broke. Are you ready? And the head of the axe, as sharp as a knife, went up in the air. You, I don't like you. And the little man looked at him and said, "Aha!" What did he say? "Aha! Have you got something to eat and to drink?" And the youngest boy said, "Yes and no." And he chopped, 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 and the tree came down with a great big crash. And when the boy looked at the bottom of the tree, he could see two eyes. But the eyes were made out of gold. Can you do that with me? And he picked up the golden goose, and as he started to walk along, he thought, I'm going to take this back to see my mother. And when he tried to take it back to his mother, it made him go along and did all. That is Daddy. You're always screaming, shouting and yelling, come here. And she put her hand on top of the mother's shoulder. Do it with me, ready? And she pulled, and she was stuck to the mother. You ready? Hey, 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 look at you. Hey, hey, you're making me laugh. If you could make if you could make the princess laugh, he'd let you marry her. The father danced, the mother danced, the daughter danced, the vicar, the shopkeeper, the boy, the girl, the dancer, the princess. The king said, "Who has made my daughter?" And when the king saw that the loaves had been eaten and the wine had been drunk, he could not stop his daughter from marrying the youngest woodcutter's son. And when the old king died, that woodcutter's son became the king. And for someone who was told, put your teeth together, I don't like you, for him to become a king was a very good thing indeed. Did you like that story? Yeah. Give yourselves a big round of applause. Well done. You have sat fantastically for such a long time. Let's try something. That means to stand up. Don't do it yet. That means to sit. persuasive, determined, experienced, nobody's slave. Enlightened, generous, happy, ingenious, joyful in the knowledge of his love. I don't know what nice means. I don't know what nice means anymore. Hands in the air, give yourselves a big round of applause up in the air. What kind of a long beard? Yes?
Broken beard.
Oh, I like the idea of a beard that isn't even. So a long, but I like the idea of a long... Where is he going to be? Now this is going to involve trains. So where is he going to be? What? Where's he going to be? Yes? Kind of train station. Three. Train station, okay, that's fair enough. Okay, I've got to say, I quite like that. A rusty, busy train station. That's almost like a tongue twister. And what is he doing at the beginning of the story? What's he doing? Remember, what kind of chocolate is it going to be? Smooth, chunky, flat, brown, sweet, sticky, old, new, yes? Chunky chocolate. Oh, we're getting into a bit of a tongue twister. Yeah, I quite like this. Sort of like in a rusty, busy train station. Just put eating chunky chocolate.
It's first day of autumn.
First day of autumn. So we're going to say first day and summer's ended, okay? So that then we've got your idea in as well, because it can't be autumn and summer, okay? First day, summer. He pulled his strong fingers through his long broken beard. He was someone who didn't always look after his hair and his beard as well as he could. Some parts of his beard pointed one way, and other parts pointed another way, and even though he was rich, he never spent the time that he could have done to make sure that he was clean shaven or his hair was straight. But he was happy. And now, sitting on this rusty, busy train station, he was tapping his feet in anticipation and eating a piece of chunky chocolate. He was going to go to London to visit his family. He was very excited. And on this, the first day of autumn, when summer was at its end, in 1960, as he looked, he could see that there was a huge sign for chocolate down by the side of the train station, advertising a different kind of chocolate. Even though he had chocolate in his hands, he was licking at his lips. He was thinking of what it would possibly taste like. There was a boy sitting beside him on the bench with a small toy gun that rattled and sparked, and I'll tell you something, it could have got on his nerves, but the idea of him going to go and see his family couldn't stop that chocolatey smile upon his lips. Show me that chocolatey smile upon his lips. The boy was sitting on the broken end of the bench, and the man looked, and he knew that he would fall or perhaps get some splinters in his legs, and he looked and he said, "Please, sit still." This boy was something of a fidget who could not keep still, but his mother looked and said, "Oh, thank you very much. I wonder, you're so kind. Could I give you something for your kindness?" And from behind her back, she pulled out a bunch of flowers. I can't give you all of them. I shall just give you one, if that's all right." "Oh," said the man, as he pulled again at his broken beard. He thought to himself, "I can give that to my wife when I see her. It's going to be such a long time." This boy was now starting to stamp and scatter around the train station, and he thought, what a strong boy who cannot keep still. But when he got onto the train, expecting to travel all of the way on the long journey to London, there was a voice that he recognised. There was 2 voices that he recognised, 3, 4 voices that he recognised. For there, sitting opposite him, he could see a smile that made his heart leap. For he looked and he saw his wife and his son and his 2 daughters. "We are getting off at the next stop, and you're getting off too. We are going to go to the beach." His little boy put his hand into his father's hand and went, "Dad, your fingers are covered in chocolate." The father looked and smiled, wiped the chocolate from off his fingers into his broken beard and said, "I know, but let's have a good time at the beach."
This man was not happy inside of this old town. All he could see were the long streets. He hadn't been born there, but he'd come to this place. He didn't like the way that people would sneer at him. And as they sneered at him, they would sneeze. Yeah, we don't like you, we don't like you inside of our old town. The houses were mouldy, and he did not like this place. But in one corner of the town, he couldn't believe his eyes. He could see that there was a flower, a beautiful flower that seemed to grow in the mud of the streets. It was gold at its tips, and all of the mould of the town seemed to go away as soon as he touched it. Now he knew that if he was to pull it out of the ground, then it would die. And he couldn't believe his ears, because as a wind blew, he could almost hear a sound. Please take me. Please take me away from this place. He took a spade and he started to dig, and as he dug it out of the ground, and as the wind blew, it was almost as if the flower was speaking to him and said, "Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Take me to the top of the hard rocky mountain." In the distance he could see it, but it was hard to get to that place. He would have to dig in the snow. He would have to make sure that he could dig, and soon the ground was smooth and as slippery as a shell. But when he got to the top of that hard mountain, there was mud there. He placed that flower that could grow so well, the flower that seemed to be able to talk, and he placed it inside. And as he was bending over and leaning down towards the mud, he could see that huge round flowers, as big as sunflowers, were not walking towards him, but moving from side to side, coming closer. And first one whispered, "Thank you." And then another said, "Thank you, and thank you, and thank you, and thank you, and thank you." And soon they were all swaying from side to side on the top of that mountain. And all of these flowers became his friends. And he stayed in that place and tended to them, made sure water would be placed at their roots, made sure that they could talk one with another. And he loved that place better than living in an old town where people would sneer and sneeze at him. Bigger, 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 bigger. Reach your hands up to the ceiling. Give the ceiling a good scratch. Well done. Well, my guitar, I play my guitar with my hands and my fingers. I think we should start off with a good... Oh, I think you're very clever. You just sang a song and you didn't sing a word. Well, I'm going to tell you a story that's all about being by the side of the sea, because there was a house. Everybody draw that house in the air with me. There was a house. Had the shoes sewn, stitched, or hammered, or mended in that place. And the girl stopped being so angry. And he stitched and sewed that silver dress. And if you go to that place, you might find that there's a shoe shop with a man and a woman sitting there who are now the best of all friends, who will smile and mend the shoes of anyone. And as far as I know, they live there to this day. The story of 3 golden heads. Give yourselves a round of applause. Did you like that? I wonder... Quite a contrast.
boxes like that?
Yes, they do. They have a newer model than what's featured in the movie.
After 300 yards, turn left. After 300 yards, turn right. Turn right. Then you have reached your destination.
So, there's a certain regularity to it all, isn't there? So here I am back in Manchester, a little bit of planning and work to do, but mostly it's about remembering and relaxing and thinking about what a fantastic weekend we've both had. So, back to the work, but all the better for a rest. So it's back to work again. It's the 8th of March. I like the fact that I had to look at the calendar to make sure. It's the 8th of March, and I'm not even sure that the school's going to be open. Not because of the weather, but they've had an inspection, and they came out not very well from that, and it's got nothing to do with the teachers or the amount of effort that they put in. But they were in special measures, and they were inspected again on Thursday and Friday. So really I'm driving off and I've no idea whether the school will be open or not. I can't really comment as to why the school would be put into special measures, but the teachers that I've been working with have tried so hard under the strain of parental indifference and children who have perhaps had no schooling up to the age of 7. So I wish that the government would recognise the amount of effort that teachers put in the circumstances that they're in. But here goes.
State Radio 2 for a Monday morning. We love the megaphone calls, so your announcements, please.
Still less of any criminal trial. And that's the difficulty with this case.
Well, it wasn't quite the doom and gloom that I was anticipating, but all things can happen these days. The inspection was sort of satisfactory. There's still progress to be made, But I didn't work with 2 different classes today. I worked with 1 class for the whole day, which is a kind of an indulgence really, to think that I had the chance to develop a story, character, plot, setting and the way that they recorded it in 1 day and have the whole day to do that. We also looked at paragraphs as well as adventure stories. I'm going to say that the children reacted very well. We had a lot of success in that, although they'd been shown paragraphs before, they weren't really using them. And at the end of the day, they understood the difference between an urban story and a rural story. And I used those terms. I think that if you're going to do something, then you might as well use the terms that are common parlance throughout the whole of the time that they'll be in the educational system. It worked out really well. It was as if there was a cloud over everyone that they'd had an inspection. And, well, I think you know my feelings by now. Don't really think that they deserved to have this perpetual scrutiny, give them a chance to develop with the children that they have, but that's just my personal opinion. The work was very good, and tomorrow it's going to be the same. I'm working with a younger class on the same idea of developing paragraphs and adventure stories. Quite a lot of thought went into this with the teacher, that we used a photograph of a farm, and that was the main focus of the setting, that it started at the farm and finished at the farm, and then there was an adventurous part of the story to go with that. But still very good. But all work and no play makes Tony a bit of a dull boy, so I'm going to have some exercise to try and forget all about the tensions of the day.
Try counting out loud. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Great job. Keep it up. Focus on the muscles you want to tighten.
Pretty much the same of it.
Now this is the Curry Mile, which during the day doesn't look that much. It's certainly one of my favourite places to go. No, it doesn't look that much during the day, but on a night time it looks like this. Now it's cheap and it's good, but it's still not as good as South Shields Ocean Road. It's about 6:30 on Tuesday evening and 1 week to go. And sometimes people wind up telling you that there'll be days like these. I just didn't quite expect quite so many. Some of the things that I've heard about what the inspectors have said just beg a belief, to be perfectly honest, about what are the teachers going to do about the pigeons that are landing in the playground. Not an exaggeration. And as I've driven over here towards Hull, when I got here, just as I'd sort of pulled the car in, I got a message from Creative Partnerships from my agent, who is absolutely fantastic, really worked extremely hard, saying that when I was being observed last week, when they had the film crew in, it seemed that all I was doing was teaching. This is me angry, by the way. I don't know what they anticipate that I was going to be doing. I know that it's part of Creative Partnerships, but not every single day can be filled with flashbang wallop guitar playing, instantaneously writing poems, doing a play and dancing up and down in the yard. The children need to have some background knowledge. The idea was that we would instill them with ideas about how you write instructional language, and the way that we did it, rather than keeping it very boring, if I can use that word, was to get them to walk up and down the yard, to consider each and every move that they make, that I took a video of outside and then they had to look at it and discuss it, And these are children who had very poor concentration skills. And the idea was that we would write stories that would include instructions. So the whole idea is you need to know the tune before you can improvise on it. So I've been asked if the film crew can come back in, but this time if I were to do a few more singing and making up of poems at the time. That's the phone. We've tried like a whole whole raft of different things to get them to write, so it's been good in that respect. Yeah. Yes, it was busy yesterday as well, and I mean the work that they came up with then was equally as good, you know, very mature, because they're like slightly older. So I said, well, in that case, what you need to do is you need to make sure that you put it down on paper and you write your stories down. You sort of think, you know, what am I doing if you're not going to write? how am I going to be able to sort of show that, you know, you're making progress? So after they'd done the writing, you know, it took a lot longer than we thought it would take, but I mean, we still got some good work out of them. We decided to make up a play. So we basically made up a play about the mountain and the rocks and the girl and all the rest of it. So they actually acted it out, and then we wound up singing and playing for the rest of the afternoon. And I thought, oh, great, there you go. Who said that I was being observed? You know, like that, I don't know if I mentioned that they were filming what I was doing. And the woman who came to watch sort of said, well, all I was doing was teaching. And I'm sort of like kind of, well, what else do you expect me to be doing, you know? So I got to... no, really. I just kind of like, I just let my feelings be known to her. I just said, like, you know, how ridiculous. She's got no idea what these children are like. You know, oh, I was livid, but I'm not now. Oh, no. Oh, well, I'm the first one in line to sort of like stand up and say, you know, just what do you think you're talking about, you know? Answer is, you've no idea. Well, I think it's like all singing and dancing, you know, it's like, you know, writing a poem every 10 seconds, but I don't know. That's an end to it. I've had enough of the paperwork and all the rest of it, so. But the other thing was, I went to go and get some envelopes and to clean the car windscreen, which was absolutely... I parked in this garage foyer, you know, like a supermarket kind of garage, and I got clamped. Yeah, 125 quid to release it. I was there so like within 10 minutes, you know, but I've looked it up on the internet and apparently it's very common. It's just the way that they work, you know. They're like... Well, there is, but the trouble is... Yeah, the trouble is that's how they work. They wind up putting like small signs, which aren't huge, and they say that they're going to change the law, but that's too late for me. But anyway, so I was, if nothing else, I was livid. I was livid to start with. I've just watched some of that back just to see where I was up to. And I've got to be honest, I don't look quite as cheesed off as I really feel, because I'm not surprised by any of this. That seems like a terrible thing to say, but I'm not surprised by people sitting and making judgments on a short portion of an 18-week course. So, there it goes. One of the things that happened was when I was going out to get some envelopes and to clean all of the bird muck off the front of the car, I put it in a forecourt of a garage on Wimslow Road, the total garage. I don't mind naming names. And I was no longer there than as long as it takes to cross a road, and I was wheel clamped. And I was quite indignant, especially since I dashed out in the dinner time to make sure I could get an envelope to send copies of the DVD to the schools that I worked with last week. And I've looked on the internet, and apparently it's completely legitimate. So £125 fine for 3 minutes and 4 envelopes. That makes those envelopes extremely expensive. Although there is a good thing to this, because I did buy a lead that is making my very expensive microphone work. So instead of paying £400 to have a new microphone, a £1.99 lead that makes this good microphone work. It was all worth it. So, getting back to the job in hand, the children over the last 2 days have produced some absolutely fantastic work. With the Year 4-5s, it's mature, it's in paragraphs, it makes sense, it is logically written, it has got everything that a story could possibly need inside of it. One of the things that's been done today, especially with the Year 3-4 class, was in collaboration with the teacher, we designed almost an instructional booklet on how to write an adventure story. All of the things that it needs to have inside of it, with some exciting verbs and some powerful adjectives that you would use to make sure that the story rolled along. The story took a long time. I won't deny it. It took a long time today with the Year 3-4s, and I did wind up having a bit of a heart-to-heart with the children, saying, do you want to do well? You need to produce more work. You need to make sure that you write all of your thoughts inside of your head and make sure they go down on the piece of paper in front of you. It's a bit like saying to someone, I'm going to give you a slap-up meal, and you give them half a sausage. I felt a bit bad afterwards, after I'd said this, that they weren't producing enough work. So we set them a deadline and said they had 30 minutes in which to write the majority of the story. Some of the children in that time who have never produced independent work produced some of the best work that they've done. It makes the comment about all I was doing was teaching seem all the harder to take. I'm not indestructible, I'm not superhuman, but what I do is of worth, and I object to somebody making a cursory judgment of me on a short portion of that. But tomorrow I'm going to be working with very, very young children, and I've decided that within this video diary I've done everything on a daily basis. Over the next 3 days I'm going to be in 3 different locations, each day working with 4 separate sets of children. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a conglomerate editing of all of the things that I do and make it into one long DVD that I will use to show the kind of work that I do with very young children. I might even sell some, but knowing me, I'm more than likely to give them away. But I'm really looking forward to it. No preparation, it's all in there. No making up of songs, it's all in there. Nobody judging me, so it'll all be there.
What we need is harmony, fresh air, stuff like that. Wasn't much in the tube. Nothing left for you.
What, sorry?
We're going for a little ride to a setting, if that's all right.
That's perfectly fine.
We'll
Okay, here we go. There was a house. Everybody draw a house in the air with me. And the house was down by the side of the sea. Can you make the sea with me? And in the house there was a man. Can you make a man? And every day different. It sounds like this. know it, stamp your feet. If you're happy and you know it, stamp your feet. If you're happy and you know it, and you really want to show it. If you're happy and you know it, stamp your feet. If you're happy and you know it, nod your head. Crick and a crack, and the first egg opened up, and out came a little duckling, and it said, quack. What did it say? It said, quack. Now they sat down for the Ghoul Gazette, and there it said, Lily is the best at dancing. But when she looked inside of the cup, there was money. Can you count with me in a big way? Ready? There wasn't £10. There wasn't £20. There are times in teaching when you wind up thinking, what am I doing? These children are never going to get this in a million years. But today, it wasn't one of those days. Yesterday, after struggling to try and get them to write an adventure story, where the children fell into that thing that children do, which is where they write what they think the teacher wants to read, and it stops being a story, to today, where it was just excellent. Excellent stories, lots of effort from all of the children. And plus that, with the teacher that I've been working with, her confidence, skill and experience came to the fore. She showed me different ways of making sure that the children put enough detail into the story so that they're not just writing the bare bones and then, and where you can add it as an extra thing. It's all part of this big write scheme. Some of the children got confused by it because there's lots of great gaps where there should be comments written in, and they've written 3 sentences, but not today. Wonderful. Really productive, and it was quality and quantity. Although we did get into that state where if this is the sheet of paper, when the children got to this part, after putting in all of the description and the feelings and the setting, the story would be finished in 2 lines. So we got past that. And I also told the story of the king's carpet, where the king gets his chancellor, who's tall and strong, to measure it out in paces, and the carpet maker gets his son to measure it out in paces. And then they realise that not everybody's the same size. It's a good story. I really enjoy it. So, you might be asking, why do I do so much travelling? Well, in the first instance, all I was going to do were the days in Manchester. And then after the Ofsted, the school was placed in special measures. And then it was under some kind of cloud as to whether I would be employed if under special measures they would allow creative partnerships to come in. So I didn't know if I was going to lose 30 days work by Ofsted saying that I couldn't come into the school. So what I did do was I took all the work that I could on the worst case scenario, which would be that I would have none of the work in Manchester. So that's why I've been dotting backwards and forwards from one side of the country to the other and going up and down the country, because I took at short notice, I've got to tell you, because it wasn't entirely certain until mid-December that I was going to be working here, and I couldn't afford to not work in that time. So I've been very busy, and it looked almost an impossible task at the beginning, where it was 24 straight days and probably something like 32 different settings in that time, because when I was working with the nurseries, I was working in 4 different places at a time each day. So I'm very pleased that we're towards the end of the tour. As I've already said, this isn't the end. I'm going to be working steadily until about April the 12th, and then I'll leave on April the 16th to go to Chile. So an interesting journey for me, and hopefully for you to watch, and varied, very varied. I've learned such a lot from the teachers that I've been working with. It's been a great journey, and I've enjoyed it. I have enjoyed it, despite having a cold right now. A cold, it's a man with a cold. I mean, I did learn when I was bringing the children up that nothing stops when you have a cold. So when I'd be pushing 2 children in the pram and having another one dragging on my arm, and I'm going up the hill as the snow falls, then you realise that you've just got to get on with it, and hopefully I have just got on with it. So, this is the last teaching session of this tour. Tomorrow I'll be in 2 different schools in the northeast, and then at a friend's school on the Friday, and Sunday I'll be setting off again to go back to Manchester and then to Beverley, and then
goodness only knows after that. That's enough information for my head to hold. I don't know how I feel, to be honest. It seemed strange. It seemed almost like this huge mountain in front of me, and now I've got so many home thoughts from abroad that I haven't really had a chance to talk about. The fact that I hit 1,000 miles in the first week, and I'm now getting up to about 700 miles. Presumably I'll be getting very close to 2,000 when I've got home. It's just been a roller coaster. I know that that's a very glib thing to say, with a lot more highs than lows, and the lows you ignore. It's a bit like that thing where you exaggerate the wins and forget about the losses. It's just a case of trying to impart what it is that I can do, because I can write, and I don't really need to teach other people how to write, because that doesn't affect the way that I write. I can write. The top and bottom of it is I'm here to help, and sometimes children don't really see that the teacher and I are here to give them support. And I can't imagine how many children I've seen in this time. I can't imagine how many stories I've created. If it was 4 a day over 20 days, then that's 80 stories that have been created. It's been great, and I'm really looking forward to going home, and I will have some things to say, I'm sure, on the road, but I'm so pleased I've done it. Well, I can't believe it. The day has come. I've finished, and now I'm setting off from Manchester to get back home. I'd like to think that I had something profound to say, but I don't really. I just want to get home and see my things in my house, be with my wife in my town. I won't be there for very long, but I'm so excited. It's terrible.